Yes, it's time for Uncancelled, where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, a storm has erupted after Bristol Rovers manager Joey Barton said this following Rovers' recent 3-1 loss to Newport. I said to the lads during the week, the team's almost like musical chairs. Someone gets in and does well, but then gets suspended or injured. Someone gets in for a game, does well, but then has a holocaust, a nightmare, an absolute disaster. For his Holocaust analogy, he has since been criticised by Rovers supporters, Jewish leaders and the wider football community, with some calling for him to step down. But is his offence really career-endingly bad? How did he say what he said? It's all about context, isn't it? With me to investigate this is the fabulous columnist, the brilliant Rod Little. Hi, Rod.
Good evening.
Now, I don't think that this man, Joey Barton, has a case to answer. It might have been clumsy language, Rod, but nothing worse than that.
No, it was nothing worse than that. He was football managers and football players are people who don't always have a great grasp of the English language, and they sometimes, in an attempt to be more colourful, perhaps extend themselves further than they should. Obviously, a player having a bad game is not a holocaust. It's not really a nightmare. It's just a bad game of football. Similarly, when Alan Pardew, the former Crystal Palace and Newcastle manager, once said of a player who performed a very good tackle, he's absolutely raped him. I think we can all agree that Alan was not quite hitting the nail on the head with that. Do you know what I mean? But the problem is that Joey Barton is probably now in the biggest mess he's ever been in, because he used a word which some people think should never be used in any other context than the one in which they think it should be used in. And this is remarkable when you consider that Joey has been done for a fray, for violence in a public place, for attacking a woman, he's on the charge of that, for attacking other managers, for punching his fellow teammates, and for stubbing a cigar out on one of his fellow players' eyes. And he's still employed. And I might add to that, he's also managed to take Bristol Rovers, a biggish club, straight down from League Division 1 to near the bottom of League Division 2. Now, all of that, I suggest, would make Joey Barton unfit to be a football manager. But not using the word holocaust.
The piece you wrote on this is fabulous, and you know, you are a remarkable wordsmith, a great broadcaster and journalist. He's not. I mean, he comes from humble origins. I don't think we should judge this guy for not having the most expansive vocabulary. I think we can actually judge him positively for having clearly turned his life around, an alcoholic, a substance user and a very violent past, you know, and he's a reformed character. And, you know, he's done some good things as a player in football, and he has done some things as a manager too. And I think his choice of words should not be how he's judged.
Now, I'm not absolutely convinced he's turned his life around quite. He's got another charge against him at the moment, and the trouble seems to occur every 3 or 4 months.
That's a shame.
He always pledges that he's turned his life around, but somehow his life kind of goes back onto those rails before. Now, look, it's a difficult issue. There is no question that Britain's Jewish community feel very, very beleaguered at the moment. They've had probably the 10 worst years that they could have endured. A party which they used to vote for en masse was riven with anti-Semitism. There are anti-Semitic attacks all over the place. And you kind of understand why the Jewish community is very, very touchy then. But you can't go down that route. You cannot corral the word Holocaust, which actually, of course, comes from the Greek, meaning burn everything, and it would refer to a conflagration, to a nuclear war, would refer to many, many things, other than, as it is in the dictionary, the Holocaust, which is a different thing entirely, and which is about the murder of Jewish people by Nazi Germany between 1932 and 1945. So I just think we've got to be very, very careful about this policing of language, and particularly the most important point. And the left often goes down this route, and I've also heard it said about Joey Barton in this occasion, it doesn't matter what he meant, it doesn't matter what words he used, it's what offence can be taken from them.
Yeah.
And if you judge someone on that, we really are heading towards a kind of totalitarianism. That really is chilling.
Well, I completely agree, and I'm sorry to hear that Joey Barton continues to have one or two issues, Rod, but the bottom line is that he's no wordsmith, and this is just a sort of ham-fisted bit of commentary, isn't it? I mean, this won't have been pre-prepared. He's not like Jose Mourinho, who thinks in advance about what zinger he's going to deliver at a press conference. I think it's more sort of an example of the Coleman Balls column in Private Eye, when they, on a regular basis, find ridiculous quotes from footballers and managers. He's made a mistake. But also, as you say, we've got to be free to use all language as long as the context is understood. And I think in mitigation, he has contextualised this word. Now, it's not a word I would use, so I completely agree with you. The Holocaust is one of the most horrific, if not the most horrific chapter in human history, a colossal human nightmare and tragedy. But he's actually used other words. He said it was a Holocaust, a nightmare, an absolute disaster. So in that sentence, he's placed some context on it. He didn't just say it was a Holocaust, end of. There is a famous episode of the sitcom Seinfeld, which is called The Soup Nazi. Should that be cancelled too?
Well, of course. And indeed, he didn't actually say the Holocaust. And if you look up in your dictionary, you will find, in any dictionary you look in, that Holocaust, its first meaning is a conflagration, a burning, a destruction of everything. Only as a secondary definition, and then always with the definite article, the Holocaust, does it refer to the appalling atrocities committed against Jews back in the 30s and 40s. So, he's not the brightest lad in the world, and you've got to forgive people for their slips of grammar. You really do have to do that.
Well, for his Holocaust analogy, he has actually had a response. We contacted Bristol Rovers for a comment on this story. A press conference on the issue, God, it's an issue now, Rod, is expected tomorrow. Let me see if we can get that to you very shortly in terms of what has been said. Well, no, we will bring you the latest tomorrow as and when that story develops. Rod, we're up against it on the clock, but a really brief word on COP26. You've raised a really good point, which is something that's ignored in the eco agenda, is pollution, the P word.
Oh, absolutely. And I've written about 1,200 words about this for The Sun tomorrow. This government has presided over the destruction of our environment, of Britain's environment. We have only 17% of our beaches are safe to swim on, according to a European environmental survey. Our rivers are worse than they've been for many years, and they had been improving. And last year, the water companies deposited sewage into our rivers 400,000 times. 400,000. When you add to that the runoff from agricultural land, which the government will never say a word about the farmers, when you add to it the destruction of our grouse moors, which are now held just for grouse and are moonscapes devoid of wildlife, this government has been terribly bad for our environment.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.